Going to call the special meeting for Akron City Council to order. Clerk will read the roll.
Baylor. Connor. Connor.
Here.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Hamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian. Amobian.
Aye.
Thank you.
Did you hear me? Can you? Okay.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Tversky.
Thank you so much. At this time, before we move into our agenda for this evening, I'm just going to ask that we please have, hold on one second. I'm hearing a lot of feedback in my. All right, sorry about that. We had a lot of feedback on this end. I think that's a lot better. Before we move into the rest of our agenda for this evening, just want to ask if council would just have a moment of silence. Over the weekend, we did lose Lieutenant Russ Brode, a member of Akron Fire Department, who has been just a great leader, an advocate in the city, advocate for firemen in the city of Akron. So he will truly be missed. And definitely our prayers go out to his family. And so just going to ask at this moment if we can have a moment of silence. Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to ask if we can please have a motion to suspend all council rules that require us to meet in person and do in-person voting. Councilman Fusco.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we, I'd like to make a motion that we suspend all rules that require or contemplate in-person meetings and in-person voting.
Very good. We have a motion on the floor. Can we get a second by Councilman Lombardo?
I second that.
Roll call.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Hamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Tversky. Mr. Tversky, I think you're still muted.
Sorry. Aye.
Okay, motion passes 12-0.
Thank you so much. At this time, can we please have a motion to approve the minutes from our previously held meeting? Councilman Fusco.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
Can we get a second by Councilwoman Samples?
Second.
Roll call.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
Minutes past 12-0.
We will now move to our old business. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, I believe it's appropriate at this time. I'd like to make a motion that we suspend all council rules that require that legislation in the planning committee first be considered by committee before presentation and consideration by council. This is the regular agenda in planning, as well as the new items, which is 6, 7, and 8, I believe, under new legislation. Earlier today, the planning committee meeting was canceled due to some technical difficulties. So therefore, requesting that motion be passed.
So we do have a motion on the floor. Can we get a second by Councilman Swirsky?
Second.
Roll call.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
Motion passes 12-0.
All right, so we'll now move into our old business. Public service, Councilwoman Samples. No,
Time,
don't have
please.
anything. Time will be granted. Planning, Councilman Fusco.
Time on the agenda.
Time will be granted. We'll now move into our new legislation.
Item number 3 had a substitute offered by Mayor Horrigan and President Somerville. Resolution authorizing the City of Akron to receive funds from the County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund pursuant to House Bill 481 to be expended to cover costs consistent with the requirements of Section 5001 of the CARES Act, and directing and authorizing the Director of Finance to take all necessary actions to comply with House Bill 481 and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Freeman.
Yes, the committee met today, and the recommendation was to suspend the rules for a favorable report.
Any objections on suspending the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended. Councilman Freeman.
Yes, as we heard today, there is pursuant to House Bill 481, there's going to be, in conjunction with the CARES Act, there is going to be some funds that we're going to be dealing with here, and we need to pass this in order to avail ourselves to those funds.
Thank you so much. The rules have been suspended. The committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This resolution passes 12-0. Item number 3A was also a substitute offered by Mayor Horrigan and President Somerville. Ordinance authorizing the existence of the local coronavirus relief fund pursuant to Governmental Accounting Standard Board Statement number 54 and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Freeman.
Yes, the committee met this afternoon, and we requested that the rules be waived and that we pass this by emergency measure.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended. Councilman Freeman.
referring back to the ordinance that we passed just a moment ago, we do need to have this ordinance passed in order to follow through with the funds. This is something that was established by the Ohio General Assembly, and we do need to pass this this evening if at all possible.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Gamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0. Item number 4, offered by Freeman. Ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Cadenza for the purchase of infrastructure upgrades, including network switches and routers to the city's data network, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Freeman,
Committee's report's favorable. We're asking for suspension of the rules.
any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended. Councilman Freeman,
This ordinance will allow us to purchase some new equipment for our network at the city. And just want to, with this, kind of commend our IT department. They got us through a time here the past couple months where there's some real strains put on our network. They made it happen, but it's time for an upgrade to some of our hardware. And so with that, we're asking for its passage.
thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0. Item number 5, offered by Freeman. Ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or her designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Environments for Business LLC for the purchase of office furniture and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Freeman,
Committee's report's favorable. We're asking for suspension of the rules.
any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended. Councilman Freeman,
Yes, very soon there's going to be some additional staff added to our IT department, and this ordinance will simply allow us to purchase some additional office equipment for that new staff.
okay, thank you so much. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0. Item number 6, offered by Fusco. Ordinance approving the 2020 Consolidated Action Plan and 2020 to 2024 Consolidated Plan, including applications and certifications for the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership, and Emergency Solutions Grant programs, authorizing the Director of Planning and Urban Development to enter into all necessary contracts for the operation and term of the programs and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco,
Yes, I'd recommend that we refer and advertise for a public hearing to be held later.
this item will be referred.
Item number 7, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Planning and Urban Development to apply for and, if awarded, and enter into an agreement or agreements with the state of Ohio for the Homeless Crisis Response Program and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco,
Yes, thank you. Helen Tomic is going to give a report on this item.
Good evening, Madam President, committee members. The state of Ohio Department of Service Agency has released special funding for the Homeless Crisis Response Program in regards to COVID. The state is allowing state-appointed applicants to apply for the special homeless prevention and rapid rehousing funding. We are to spend the money in the next 2 years. All funds must be spent by September of 2022. The application is due on June 22nd, 2020. The Homeless Crisis Response Program will provide financial assistance to households, individuals, and families who are currently homeless or about to be homeless due to the COVID exposure. Funds may be used for rental assistance, security and utility deposits, utility payments, moving costs, and hotel motel vouchers. The length of the assistance varies based on needs. They will have to be recertified every 3 months to determine if there's need for further rental assistance. The City of Akron will work with United Way, our rapid rehousing provider, to disperse the funds to the community. We are set to receive about $143,000, as I said, to be spent over the next 2 years. As indicated, the application is due on June 22nd, so we're asking for suspension of the rules on this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Tomic. At this time, do we have any comments or questions? Councilman Fusco?
Yes, I'd recommend, based on the timing, that we go forward and we suspend the rules and we vote favorable this evening.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Can we get a second by Councilman Malik?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Okay.
I'm just curious. Can you hear me, Madam President?
Yes, we can.
This doesn't have anything to do with our normal allocation. Is that correct, Ms. Tomic?
That is correct. We typically receive a 2-year grant. We applied in 2019, so we're set to apply again in 2021. These are special funds related directly to the COVID outbreak.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Malik?
Yes, Ms. Tomic, are there thoughts on what kinds of activities we would, focus on for these funds?
So for the first time in a long time, the state is allowing for homeless prevention. So that would indicate if due to unemployment or furloughs, individuals or families are having difficulties in paying their rent and face the possibility of getting evicted, then we can use these dollars to pay back rent and allow them to stay in their current apartment rather than disrupting their routine, having them evicted, going into a homeless shelter and seeking other housing.
Thank you very much. I think that ties in, with some of the work that we've talked about over the past few months and even last week about, housing being one of the, social issues that's, has very much a race component too, and something which I'm sure we'll tackle going forward. And I know we're doing a lot with rent assistance, and so hopefully this will be a way of doing that more thoughtfully going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Councilwoman Movian? Sure, yes.
I just want to follow up, Mrs. Tomic. Because we have so many people that are facing eviction, the United Way has a process in place that they're going to use to prioritize how they utilize these funds. I mean, I don't know how you're going to associate it with COVID, because many of these people, some of them I know, have been facing eviction because they've not been able to pay their rent for several months before COVID. So do we know what they're going to be doing other than just, do they have applicants already, or are they going to be receiving applications? How are they going to get the word out? How are they going to do this, I wonder?
So as with other federal and state funding related to homelessness, they are going to have to go through the front door, so to speak, through the homeless management information system. And case managers at United Way will do an assessment to make a determination of, 1, what is the best recourse to solve their problems, 2, what is the best funding source, and then 3, will they be better appropriated for diversion? Perhaps they may not need financial assistance, but there's other resources out in the community. Perhaps they can, if they are facing eviction, they could go stay with families. So we do have a mechanism in place to make those assessments and make those proper referrals.
Okay, at some point, hopefully you'll give us a report as to how it went.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any additional comments or questions at this time from council members? Seeing and hearing none, we do have a motion and a second on the floor for suspension of the rules. Roll call.
Baylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 13-0. Item number 8, offered by Fusco. Ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement or agreements with Western Reserve Community Fund Incorporated as a third-party payer in order to satisfy a portion of the loan entered by QT Equipment Company and declaring an emergency.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think we have either Mr. Brad Beckert or Sam DeSager who's going to present on this.
Madam President, Brad's going to give some of the intricate details of the project. I'll just say that this happens to be QT Equipment, a manufacturer of construction equipment for the area, who's going to have an expansion. This expansion is about a $1.2 million expansion to their current facility that happens to be in the Firestone Park area. We've entered into an agreement with our partners, the Summit County Land Bank, and also the Development Finance Authority in order to make it happen. Mr. Beckert, if you give some of the details of it, then that probably would close the discussion.
Yes, the loan or the agreement that the city, the county, and the land bank or the city, the county, and Development Finance Authority are entering into is a loan to QT, and the city and the county and the Development Finance Authority are going to be able to actually pay part of this loan back over 2 years. It is actually for some soil remediation in order for them to build their addition. The city has an obligation for $35,000 to help towards the project, and that will be distributed over 2 years, which means it'll be in the fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022 for $17,500 each year. With this new addition, QT is going to be able to add 15 jobs, and these are well-paying jobs, well above the $15 an hour mark. They make construction equipment beds for trucks, which are used all over the construction industry, and they are growing very rapidly.
I might add that it's about a 15,000 square foot expansion as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilman Fusco?
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. I would also request that Council Representative Kamer, his name be added to this particular piece of legislation as it's in his ward, and I know he's aware of this entire proposal. I'd just like to remind Council too that this is indirect costs. So oftentimes commercial lending, this is to prepare the land for the construction. And so that's why this gap kind of financing, if you will, is put together so they can prepare the land for the construction and move forward. So with that, I'm gonna respectfully request that we suspend the rules and we have a favorable report this evening.
So we do have a motion on the floor for suspension of the rules. Can we get a second? Councilman Kamer?
Sure, I'll second Jeff Fusco's motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Councilman Kamer, did you have any comments?
The only thing I'll say, thanks, Madam President. I support the project. I appreciate Brad Beckert reaching out to me and speaking with me about this throughout the process. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. So we do have a motion on the floor with a second for suspension of the rules. Roll call. And before we take the vote, I'm so sorry. I see that Councilwoman Amobian has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. How long has this company been around?
Oh, they've been there for probably 20 years, 25 years.
In the Akron area?
Yes. It's
Thank you.
the Root family.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions at this time? Seeing and hearing none, roll call.
As a reminder to please unmute yourself when I call your name. Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 13-0. Item number 9, offered by Kamer. Ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or her designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Priority Dispatch for training and education of 911 call center technicians and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Kamer?
Thank you, Madam President. The committee's report is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules this evening.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you. This is basically to move forward with additional training in our dispatch center, basically under the Akron Fire Department umbrella.
Okay, thank you so much. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky. Mr. Swirsky, I didn't hear your
Aye.
response.
Aye.
Thank you. This ordinance passes 13-0. Item number 10, offered by Kamer. Ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement or agreements with Copley Township for automatic and mutual aid in order to reduce emergency response time in certain areas of concern and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Kamer?
Thank you, Madam President. Once again, the committee's report is favorable, and we're asking for suspension of the rules.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Hearing and seeing none, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Madam President. Basically, this is an agreement with Copley Township. It's a new computer-aided dispatch known as CAD. Basically, it will both Copley Township and the city of Akron will respond in order to reduce the response time to emergencies.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Kamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 13-0. Item number 11 is also a substitute offered as an amendment. Offered by Kamer, resolution approving and confirming the appointment of Council President Margot Somerville, Council President Pro Tem Rich Swirsky, John Frank, Terry Albanese, Marilyn Keith, and Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Charles Brown to the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Board for a term ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay, Councilman Kamer, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Obviously, today we met and suspension of the rules was the favorable motion. But moving forward with the amendment, I do have to poll my committee, if that's okay, if I could do so, please.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. I'm going to poll my committee. We have Malik.
Aye.
All right, McKittrick,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Swartzky,
Aye.
and myself, aye.
All right, very good. So the committee has been polled for suspension of the rules. Councilman Kamer,
Yes, Madam President.
any objections on the suspension of the rules at this time? Seeing and hearing none. Councilman Kamer, do you have any additional comments?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, the committee's report is favorable. The rules have been suspended. Roll call.
Baylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Hamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville,
Aye.
Swirsky.
Aye.
This resolution passes 13-0.
Okay, thank you so much. We will now go to the portion of our meeting that we refer to as our public comment period. So we will ask the clerk to read in the public comments that we have received. On last week, we were reminded by the law department that we were not following the law. We have been reading comments in that have exceeded our 3-minute rule limit. So we are going to get back on track and make sure that we stay within our 3 minutes allowed for our public comment period. Clerk will read the comments in.
This is from Michelle Marino. To whom it may concern, I found myself needing to use Akron Metro buses recently. I realized that Metro is not run by the city, but many people who rely on the buses live within the city. In addition, Metro receives 92% of its revenue from taxes. As such, I think it should be concerning to City Council that not only has Metro cut the number of buses running throughout the day, but they've cut some routes completely. I'd be curious to know what City Council is doing to address this issue. Are you reaching out to Metro to urge them to get these routes back up and running? There are many within the city who do not have cars. These people rely on Metro to get to work, the store, the doctor, etc. Thank you for your time in this matter. This is from Michelle Garrow. Dear committee members, Mayor Horrigan, additional council members, and President Somerville. I'm the wife of an Akron police officer. I am also the daughter of a police officer, the aunt of a police officer, and former dispatcher for Akron Police and Fire. I have been watching with growing dismay and alarm the ongoing cries for defunding of police departments and wanted to take a moment to share my thoughts on the matter with you, and I hope you will consider them. While the tragic murder of George Floyd continues to spark outrage, protests, and in some instances riots across our nation, it must be remembered that 4 individuals, I cannot in good conscience call them officers, and I struggle to even call them men, are responsible for his death. 4. It must also be remembered that not one officer in Akron had anything to do with the death of George Floyd. What Mr. Floyd's tragic death has done is shine a light on the fact that there is a need for a hard look at police departments nationwide. But this look does not include a knee-jerk reaction based on emotion to defund police departments. Instead, I ask you to do the following. First, I urge you to observe. While it seems some of you have done ride-alongs with our department, I have to ask how many of you have ridden along on consecutive nights in multiple districts. While I applaud the fact that you have taken the initiative to ride along and observe our city, the very idea that you have a competent understanding of this city based on one ride-along, on one evening, in one district, in one sector, we have 4, is, and I mean no disrespect, absurd. I urge you to take a week and ride along on 4 evenings. We will address the 5th evening below. 1 in each sector in order to fully observe this city, your city, and understand that what happens in Ellet is not the same as what happens at Wooster Superior. That what happens in Highland Square is not the same as what happens in Kenmore, both of which are nothing like what happens on North Hill. And don't observe during day shift. Our city comes alive at night. Ride along during 3 to 11 or 7:30 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. or even midnight shifts. You haven't seen anything until the bars let out at 2:30. Although right now with COVID, that will be tame. And do it when it's hot if you really want to see your city at its most real. Next, I urge you to listen. Spend a shift in dispatch. If you really want to understand why officers respond to calls like they do, listen to how the calls come into dispatch. Those callers themselves dictate how the officers respond. I will never forget sitting in my chair at dispatch, calmly calling the roll with my sergeant's hand on my shoulder as I was dying inside because a citizen called in a shots fired, officer down call, and I was trying to determine which officer was hit. You see, it was my husband's district, and I had to wait to get his unit number to hear whether it was him. And after I heard his voice, there was no relief because I still had to find out who was down. As more and more officers sped to the scene, as one officer punched through a glass security door with chicken wire reinforced glass and cut himself to bits to get inside of the officer who was reported down. The worst part of it was after the dust settled. We all learned the caller lied. Yes, he lied. I'm sorry, the time is up for that one.
Thank you so much. And again, all of these public comments have been provided to all council members in your email. We will now go to our committee assignments. Planning and Economic Development, Councilman Fusco.
1 o'clock.
Parks and Rec, Councilman Neal.
1:45.
Public Service, Councilwoman Samples.
2 p.m.
Public Safety, Councilman Kamer.
2:15, June 22nd.
Public Utilities and Green Committee, Councilman Swirsky. Councilman Swirsky.
I'm sorry, 2:30.
Health and Social Services, Councilwoman Amobian.
2:30.
Rules, Councilman Freeman.
2:30,
Budget and Finance, Councilman Freeman.
3 p.m.
Housing and Neighborhood Assistance, Councilman Fusco.
Subject to call.
Thank you. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Freeman? Oh, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. We still have Mr. DeShazer on the line, I believe, here. And I was just curious if you could give us a little update about how the Amazon project is coming, if there's anything has happened to their time frame. I know originally they were looking at September. We could just get a quick update on that. If now's not the appropriate time, we can talk in the future.
Mr. DeSager, are you prepared to give us a little update?
Well, I can tell you what I know at this moment. You're right. The time frame was supposed to be September. What I'll do though is to double back and make sure that it hadn't slipped any. For what I understand, might have been more than a month pushed back into the month of October. And by December, all systems should be go for them to be in full production. That's the last thing that I heard. That's been more than a month ago. So I'll get that and I'll send you a note as to what the most recent update is.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else coming for council? I do see Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to briefly speak about the plea to the Public Safety Committee in regards to the one public comment that was just read in. I want to thank, I believe her name is Michelle, that wrote the letter that was supposed to be, that was read in. And I just want her to know that, you know, me personally have rode around with the police approximately about 16 times since I've been on council. And a lot of times that's been with the cops officers, our neighborhood response team officers, the K-9 unit, with the detectives. Actually, I know a lot of council members, my colleagues right here, have rode around with the police department and also our Akron Fire Department. I do know your father, Marco, organized a few years ago for a lot of the administration and council members to ride around with the police department that one evening during the weekend. And I think we should continue doing that. And I encourage us to organize another event like that where we can ride along during the weekends. And to the new council members, if you haven't rode around with the police department or med unit, I would encourage you to do that because it's a real eye opener. It builds relationships between us and them. And I encourage you to do that. And then finally, I encourage more citizens to try to participate in ride-alongs so they can see what our men and women are out there doing. So thank you for that time, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilman Kamer. Anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Malik?
Yeah, I just also want to speak to Ms. Guerra's public comment, and she's a resident in Ward 8. And, I think the broader message that we hear from, and I certainly agree with Councilman Kamer that, I've had a chance to do it once, but I certainly, to the point, need to do it more times. But I think it's more about the fact that we all have, there's always learning that we can do. And these systems that have built up, just policing, but we can look at all the systems, are so complex. And there are people who have spent their lives working on them and understanding them. And as we move forward in this, there's an opportunity to really kind of dissect these things and try to understand. And it's important for citizens who have concerns about the interactions with police to be able to share those perspectives. It's important for police to be able to share the work they do and how hard it can be, and experiences like Ms. Guerra shared with, being a dispatcher and hearing those terrible things. And so I hope as we move forward, we're able to have that kind of community dialogue and really kind of ask ourselves, all of us, how do we create a safer Akron? Because we see with this tragic killing that happened yesterday, there are of course things that we absolutely need. The police have an awesome responsibility and duty and that they serve. But there are so many ways that we can participate in building a safer Akron. So I hope we all think about that and all sort of recommit ourselves to doing that learning.
Thank you, Councilman Malik. Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To that regard, I know we've all gotten the emails, and this email spoke to it. I think, there's a different understanding depending on who you talk to on I think it's the wording when the term defunding the police comes out. But if you remember, back before the holidays, during one of our council meetings, we had a conversation with our police chief asking him how many of our calls are social service calls. How many calls that our officers make are calls that could be handled by a social worker, a mental health worker, or an ambassador for the community. And I think it's important for us to engage the community and take a look at how can we better support the police as well as our community and get more bang for our buck. I think I've used this term before. When our police go out, that is a very expensive social service call. I would like to find out what a call is when a police officer goes out. But if I could just use an imaginary figure, let's say when our officers go out, that's $250 per call. And if they're going out on, if 20% of their calls are basically social service calls, whatever that is, for that 250, we could probably get 5 at $50 by sending out a social worker or a mental health worker. And we could build a network and a team with our community police officers. So this is a unique opportunity for us to look at how we police our communities, how we engage our communities. And I appreciated the conversation this afternoon about the COVID dollars and other things. I wasn't able to speak, but I was listening. And I think now is the time for us to engage our community with being able to look at the finances so that they can understand what the cost is and so that we can better understand and look at how we can better support our police and better support our community. Because this conversation we were actually having before all of this happened, taking a look at how we could better maximize our dollars when it comes to not just policing, but servicing our community.
Thank you so much, Councilman Neal. Councilwoman Amobian? Councilwoman Amobian, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam President. I think Mr. Neal touched on exactly what I wanted to say. First of all, I certainly want everybody to know in Akron, I don't think anybody on council is thinking about defunding our police department. But I think basically the things that we have seen over a period of time, we are talking about how can we look at readjusting or recalibrating the office of the police department. Because I know the quick response team is a really good tool to use for some of these calls that we get. But I was thinking about the situation that happened in Atlanta last night. If only those officers had a social worker or a emergency team to call, someone could have taken that man home to his family and it wouldn't have resulted in the fatality. So I think it's a matter of just looking at what kind of calls do police officers get and what kind of situations are they put in that they really shouldn't be involved with. And I know that domestic violence is one of those situations they hate, and I don't blame them because so many of those turn deadly or something happens that shouldn't have happened. But I think this is a wonderful time for us to look at police services in conjunction with the police department and identify those things that they don't think they should be involved with. And if we have other ways of addressing those emergencies or those situations, we should try to come up with them. And I think Mr. Neal identified a number of situations that we've talked about over the years. And I know that some of the leaders in the paper talked a lot about community policing, for the officers to have more time to walk and get to know folks in the communities, but not necessarily to do all this outreach and social services that they provide, because there are so many other resources that could be put in place. But that's all I want to say, that we're not thinking about defunding, but it is a wonderful time to work with the officers to find out how can we join forces with you and identify things that you shouldn't be involved in anymore.
Thank you, Councilwoman Amobi. And Councilman Swirsky?
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to the person who wrote us the email urging us to join in the ride-alongs, and also to Councilman Kamer for his urging of new members and all of us to use those ride-alongs to educate ourselves about what a police officer goes through. And I know some of us have done some of it, and we certainly could do more. I also want to say that many of the issues that have been brought forward that invite more scrutiny of the police department, more scrutiny of how we allocate our resources, what the focus, what the strategies of the police department are things that we all should be looking into. And collaboration with mental health services, increasing prevention programs like community policing, I think are very laudable goals. And I think we can do all of that. And I think we can avoid some of the more extreme ideas like defunding the police. But I do think we should look under every stone and accept every new idea as a possibility for improving our city.
Thank you so much, Councilman Swirsky. Anyone else that wants to bring forth comments that have not had an opportunity? Councilman Malik?
My apologies for speaking twice, but Councilman Neal reminded me of something that I read over the weekend. The Beacon Journal shared the Police Executive Research Forum study from 2011 of the police department, and I was just going through it, and something at the end caught my eye. It said, the Akron Police Department should aggressively pursue alternative methods of responding to the public service demands other than the immediate dispatch of a patrol unit, right? And that's, I think, what a number of folks, mentioned today. And we talk about, I think Chief Ball has told us that there's over, I think, 250,000 calls for service that come in every day. And our patrol officers have a burden of running from call to call to call to call often. And if there are ways to reduce that burden and create more breathing room for community policing and that folks like social workers or counselors can address, I think that's certainly one thing. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Malik, for sharing that. Any other comments or questions coming before council at this time? Seeing and hearing none. Do we have a motion for adjournment, Councilman Sworsky?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
we have a second. All in favor, just signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.